Cristian Reyes is a first generation Mexican American graduate student, an emerging higher education policy professional dedicated to advancing basic needs access and equity for students. He serves as a graduate assistant with Cal Poly Basic Needs, contributes to National Basic Needs Advocacy as a member of Swipe Out Hunger's Leadership Council, and has authored NAFSA's Basic Needs Real Cost blog series, highlighting students' lived experiences with basic needs. Christian is set to start a new role as a policy analyst with Today's Students Coalition, where he supports federal advocacy to improve college affordability and strengthen basic needs resources for today's diverse student population. Welcome, Christian.
Hello, welcome. Oh, not welcome, but I'm so happy to be here with you in conversation.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to, get to meet you and ask you some questions today about your background and kind of the work that you do. So, starting off, you bring such a values-based approach to your work. So, I'm curious to know what early experiences, both personally and or as a student, helped shape the commitment you have to basic needs equity in higher education.
Yeah, I think I always like to start off with an example of myself and my story as an undergraduate. But I remember there were days where I would go hungry, and I think I thought it was kind of like a universal experience. I was like, everybody goes through this. But I think getting through my undergraduate and thinking that was normal, I think that perspective shifted entirely when I stepped into my role with basic needs, where I saw that there were other students who were experiencing this, but the number wasn't as big as I thought it was going to be. And there's students who are in urgent need of meals. And I think really just seeing how students are in need of urgent resources, but sometimes that's not available. Sometimes the institution doesn't have the capacity to provide those. Um, I think that's had a huge impact on me, and just in terms of like it's continued to fuel my commitment to advocacy for basic needs, equity in higher education. But I think more so, a lot of my work revolves around Hispanic-serving institutions, and I think coming in with like a racialized lens, I see that a lot of these resources tend to be underutilized by students of color, and we see that for students of color, there is a higher demand in resources like this. And students are scared to ask for help. So it's really like, how can we tailor these resources to be there for students, but also how can we make sure that students are aware of these resources that are available to them? Um, but I think it can even be expanded to other student demographics, like students with dependents. Um, Though I myself don't identify as a student with dependence, I do realize that there are additional burdens that I have not had I have had privileges in that part because there's additional barriers that different demographics face. But I think really a lot of it is like a one size fits all approach when it shouldn't be a one size fits all approach. I think we should be providing tailored resources to students to ensure that we're meeting each and one of their demands. Because when we're not providing the student needs, we're letting them fall through the cracks. And when students are falling through the cracks, it's impacting lives heavily. Um, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that context. I feel like so many advocates, their leadership and their commitment often starts with personal experience. So I like that we
Hmm.
kind of started off by grounding your work in that and having that understanding. Um,
Yeah.
so, in your role as a graduate student with Cal Poly Basic Needs, what does your day to day work look like, and what are some of the unique basic needs challenges you see among students on your particular campus?
Yeah, in my role as a grad assistant with basic needs, I oversee the meal voucher program, which is essentially depends on the funding that we have for the annual year, but we shift amounts depending on like the demand. But that I guess that speaks to the problem and just kind of like the sense of urgency that we've seen within the students. We've had stable funding, stagnant funding for the last few years, but we've seen the increase of the meal voucher program increase drastically. And it kind of feels like our hands are tied. We have such limited funding, but we've had increased demand in programs like this, and we're not able to help out all of the students that reach out. And I think I myself am a recipient of the meal voucher program, and I think it's been so helpful. And sometimes there's days where I'm working from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I have class 4 to 8 p.m. And there's no time in the day to ensure that I'm like grabbing a meal. But through the meal voucher program, I'm able to ensure like I can grab like a hot meal I can take with me to class. And that's not really an opportunity that a lot of the students get, because we have such limited funding. We're not able to extend that opportunity to other students. Um, and I'm thinking more specifically, we have a lot of like case by case instances. And sometimes we have students who come to us with, they're not only facing food insecurity, they're also being impacted by housing insecurity. They're also being impacted by transportation issues. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I think institutions really need to develop better ways and better referral systems to collaborate with campus partners. I'm thinking specifically in terms of like financial aid and basic needs. How can we ensure that we're training our financial aid staff to share these resources with students? Because oftentimes when students are experiencing financial crisis or they're experiencing anything where they need money, they'll look into financial aid, and financial aid will refer them, maybe provide some loans. But instead of providing loans, they should be providing resources, and they should be providing opportunities for students to seek out any resources that the institution has. Um, yeah, and I think it's been very disheartening also just to see the increase of the demand for the program, but kind of being with our hands tied. A lot of students are also falling through the cracks. So I think we also need to rethink and re-innovate ways to ensure that we're allocating enough funding to ensure that we're meeting students' basic needs. Because, as I said before, when we're not assisting students with meeting their basic needs, we're letting them fall through the cracks. And when they're falling through the cracks, they're not achieving their degrees, they're not being retained by the institution, and we're continuing to leave them behind.
Just like a quick follow up question to that. When you said you help with the meal voucher program, sorry if I missed this, but are these like physical meal swipes? Are they like paper vouchers? What does that look like?
Yeah, these so at Cal Poly each student has their Poly ID, which is essentially like a student ID card, and funds are loaded into their dining accounts where then with their Poly ID they can swipe each time they're checking out at like one of the restaurants or dinner venues on campus. So yeah, they're loaded virtually through campus dining. And I guess that also speaks to just kind of the collaboration that we do with the meal voucher program. It's a collaborative effort between not only basic needs but also our financial aid office. As a financial aid office, will kind of help us screen students to determine those that are most like in financial need. And then our campus dining partners will help with like if we get like some donor funds, they'll help us put that into our budget, and they'll also assist by like loading the funds into the student poly IDs.
Gotcha. I was just curious. But, speaking more to your leadership, you've contributed nationally through Swipe Out Hunger's Leadership Council and your NAFSA Basic Needs Real Cost blog series. What stories or experiences or insights from those national roles have shaped how you think about student basic needs and policy change?
Yeah, I think I'm feeling mixed emotions because in talking with a lot of advocates across the nation, we've seen that the basic needs movement has become more visible. It's become more evident, and there's become more awareness about the issues like basic needs. And when we're aware of the issue, we can talk about it. But then again, it points us to consider: are we having enough conversations about this? It's a problem we're aware of. It's a problem that's continuing to happen. And what are we doing about that? And I think really through contributing and collaborating with people across the nation, through the Leadership Council, through releasing some publications, it really allows us just to garner that attention on the basic needs movement. And I think, yes, one, continuing to talk about it is what will help with visibility. but also push to policymakers. I think more recently with the government shutdown, we also saw a lot of stories of students who were going hungry, who had their EBT that wasn't being provided. And for example, one of my friends was going hungry and she applied to a CARES grant, which is like an emergency relief fund on our campus. And unfortunately was denied because the demand was so high, because so many students were in need of this resource because of the federal shutdown. Um, so I think one, continuing the conversation and continuing to talk about it, but also where we're having that conversation. We should continue to push that conversation into legislation. We should ensure that our policymakers are aware of the issues that are happening on the ground, that they're aware of the stories and the experiences that students are having. I think it's always powerful and humanizing to hear the experience of a student, because there's so much relation in that. And yeah, which is, we'll talk about this later, but in my upcoming role as a policy analyst with Today's Students Coalition, I'm excited to continue the work in basic needs and to continue the advocacy that's driving this change for the basic needs movement.
Yeah, I think that's a great transition. That was actually my next question for you because you were talking about the need for more conversations around policy and really getting this to be a national movement, which I know Swipe Out Hunger is particularly known for and has really mobilized a lot of universities around around the country. But speaking to the role that you've stepped into as a policy analyst with Today's Students Coalition, or that you're about to, what issues are you most excited to work on at the federal level? And how do you think this position will allow you to advance equity for students?
Yeah, I mentioned the student voice being the most powerful in the conversation. And I think I'm really excited at the idea of being able to work with students through the different fellowship programs, and to be able to amplify their stories, to be able to amplify their voices, to be able to include them in those conversations where the student voice isn't typically heard. Being able to step into legislative meetings and share the experiences that these students are having to highlight the issue that's happening on the ground. I think the basic needs movement is one that I'm really excited to continue work on, to continue tackling, because as much as I'd like to think that we're in a perfect spot right now, we have a lot of work to continue doing because we have a lot of students who are still going hungry. We have a lot of students who are still unhoused. We have a lot of students who are still trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B due to transportation issues. So I think basic needs is one of the many issues that I'm really excited to continue my advocacy efforts on. But I think a second one is also college affordability. And that really is also tied to the basic needs movement, with the rising cost of living, the rising cost of groceries, the rising cost of college tuition and college expenses. Um, it's also making us wonder, like, where are we leaving the students in this conversation? And how can we continue to make sure that we're providing a quality education that's accessible to not only one certain demographic of students, but to all demographics of students, regardless of who they are, where they come from. And I think education is an opportunity that should be provided to anybody and everybody. I think, speaking on my experience as a first generation student, it's been life changing. It's been very impactful. Um, I've had the opportunity to travel to different states. I've had the opportunity to meet certain people. And those are dreams that my ancestors have had. And those are dreams that they weren't able to accomplish because there was such limited opportunity. But because we're continuing to have these conversations, we're continuing to open the doors. And in this role specifically, I'm excited to continue that conversation and to continue to open the doors for other people, because this is not an individualistic effort, it's a collectivistic effort where we all have to put our voice in the conversation to ensure that we're making a collective change for all.
Well, the work that you're doing now and the work that you'll continue to do is incredible. And so I'm super excited and wishing you all the best as you step into this new role. I know that's, such meaningful and important work. And like you said, it's such a community effort. And I know that, your community is behind you in this. And I'm excited to see how that unfolds. But my last question for you is, looking ahead, what's your broader vision for the future for both your own career and the college basic needs movement. What changes do you hope to help drive in higher education over the next few years? I know your bio mentioned, you're a future higher ed policy professional. So what does that look like to you?
Yeah, I think in terms of my career, I'm currently in the process of applying to some PhD programs, which is really exciting, but also very nerve-wracking. um, but yeah, I'm wanting to pursue a PhD in education to explore and continue the research that I've been doing, one, on food insecurity, but also two, with an intersection on Latina students. I've been heavily involved on campus through the Hispanic-serving institution initiatives, and I think that there's also a lot of great work to be done. And this is a research area that I feel like hasn't been heavily explored, that I can continue to contribute to, that will not only have an impact on the Latina community, but just on the general basic needs movement as a whole. And I think generally speaking, also for my aspirations in the college basic needs movement, I dream of a world where we can have students pursue their education, and the only thing they have to worry about is if they're going to pass their class or not. We shouldn't live in a world where students have to worry about where they're sleeping the next day, what they're going to eat for dinner that night, how they're going to pay their rent, how they're going to get from point A to point B. I think really, I hope to make an impact to continue making this conversation and this movement more visible, to continue to make policymakers aware of the challenges, the issues that are happening on the ground. I have a lot of hope, but I think that hope also feeds just kind of like the vision that I have, and with the vision, there's also motivation behind that. Um, I'm grounded in making that impact and making that effort, but also acknowledging I'm one person. It takes a collective effort to do this, so we're all in this together.
I love that so much. I think that's such a great place to end this episode. And I just want to thank you so much again, Christian, for your wonderful insights today. It was great to learn more about the work that you're doing for Cal Poly and with basic needs, and also just generally a higher education, right? I'm also a higher ed professional myself. And so it's always just so nice to hear what others across the country are really doing to, you know, contribute to this collective effort, as you mentioned. And I just find so much inspiration in the ways that you're also like maintaining and advocating for your communities as well. That means so much to you. Like you mentioned, the Latina community. I think that work and that specific niche work is so incredibly important. So thank you again for joining me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor.
All right, well, that wraps up this week's episode of the Student Impact Report. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at SBNC_USA, and you can also catch our episodes on Spotify and YouTube. See you next time.